Hello, everybody, again, and welcome to another SkaredCast live video. I am supposed to be live on all forms of the imagination, on YouTube, on Twitch, and all this stuff. Thank you so much for being patient. I've been trying to figure something out, but we are talking 9th edition Warhammer 40,000, which is super exciting, and I'm so pumped about it. And hopefully you get a chance to sort of live through and watch this. And yes, there we go. We are live. Oh, I'm so excited, so happy. Welcome, one and all, to everything that's going on right now. Hello on all the social media platforms. Thank you so much for liking, sharing, subscribing. Thank you very much for Games Workshop for sending me a copy of this amazing box set. And today is going to be about us chatting and talking about the new Warhammer 40,000 core rules, which I have in my hands. And it's been very hard to keep my mouth shut about it because I love new editions. And it's been absolutely painstaking to know about this stuff and not really be able to tell anybody about it or tell friends about it or anything. And then basically playing the game with like only what GW had been releasing in my As You Know It battle reports. But now everything is up in the air. It's open. We can talk about it now, which is great. Pete's okay. Thank you, Pete. Hello, Reek, Pete, John, M, Cannon, Frankie, Mr. Kari, Matt, Ultimetra. Yay. Okay. So Ultimetra says, "Hey, Scar, I'm going to be that guy. Bring up the recent controversy about having a painted army. Way too many people be encouraged positive. I feel like they can't do it. Hey, just put paint on it. That's what we say here. Hey, Enrico. Hey, Rick. How's it going?" So really excited about showing everybody this. So as we were talking about before, I had to kind of restart the stream. But hello, welcome. hello. Oh, I'm so excited to be able to talk about this and show everybody. So let's start over again. First of all, the book itself. You open it up, you take it out of the box, and that new book smell. GW nails it every single time. And it is a dense and heavy book. Like it is hefty. This book is not going to shift. Well, like every time I pick it up, like I feel like I'm physically working out, which is crazy. What happened? They said it was okay to preview everything. Yes, Matt. That means for our game tomorrow. Huh? We can play now with the actual rules, Matt. Bring around your Tyranids. Let's play some fun combat patrol style games. Which will be fun. I don't have the points yet. Nobody has the points. So I'm excited to see how the points do. But I love how they expanded on the story and the fluff. And a lot of the artwork is new and like exciting. And they've really put a lot of work into fleshing out all of the different factions throughout 8th edition, and it really shows. Not only is this book gorgeous, like just really fun to flip through, the pages feel like they're sturdy pages, because we're going to flip through them over and over. The artwork is inspiring, which always encourages you to build and paint and collect more, which is pretty cool. And what else can we expect from the Darkin? Yeah, well, Crusade? Yeah, we can start our Crusade forces. Absolutely, we can start Crusade, buddy. Let's start it. Let's do some little Crusade stuff. It'll be fun. So the first thing I noticed when I opened this book was, of course, the cool Space Marine drop turret of doom straight out of StarCraft. And I thought that was really, really cool. And I took the liberty of building and painting. And I'm going to be painting all of next week, essentially. I'm going to paint this guy, another Black Templar. Why not? Because he looks so badass. He's so cool. So I'm really excited to have him as part of my army, as well as all the other new Space Marine stuff. But about 2/3 of the book is story, fluff, talking about like lore, like the whole 2 pages of Drukhari instead of like a single paragraph. Like that feels cool. Like we get as much story as Craftworld Eldar. Come on, like awesome. Thank you very much, Games Workshop, for that. That's awesome. I've been thinking about selling my Black Templars, says Jiva. Well, it's up to you. You can do whatever you want with yours, right? So you can literally do what you want. and no one will fault you for it. Then we have Harlequins and Ari. You got like different war zones, and then the different types of Xenos and where they fit in and all this crazy stuff. It's like, honestly, Games Workshop, thank you so much for just compiling all this information into one tome. I don't know about you, but when I started out the game, I would like look and I could spend hours flipping through the book, just looking at the pictures and gaining inspiration from the little quotes on the sides of the pages and the little stories, and kind of creating like a vision in my head of what I feel would be awesome. And so thank you for kind of doing that. And on a side note, I hope that they make the Webway portal amazing. Yeah, so it's really cool. Do you think Grey Knights are going to get replaced by Primaris? I doubt it. Could be. Who knows? I have no idea. I change doesn't bother me too much. I adapt, overcome, and I'm happier for it. You want to be positive. So many people are negative sometimes about stuff. And then, of course, the rules. And guess who is the main? Oh, that's right. I'm going to say that's an homage to me. Hey, David, how's it going? Hey, Evan, what's going on, buddy? So, how to play Warhammer 40,000. So there are 3 different types, of course. They've kind of brought this in. You've got open play, you have match play, you have narrative play. That doesn't really change. Now, they do have the rules key, and something that I really, really like about the way they've written rules. Number one, the rules are really wordy, and they're a lot better explained. Secondly, they have a point form for each of the rules and some examples on like the sidebars and stuff, which allow you to sort of get an understanding. And really, if you just want to read the rules point form, it kind of gives you all the points of the rule without like having to go into the nuance of the wording. So you can read the rules a lot faster than you could normally by just going, okay, points, 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 points. And that's kind of how that goes. And we will be going through the missions as well, because there are a lot of missions. A lot. And that's not even including the sort of, they reveal there's going to be like a GT tournament pack with missions specifically designed for tournaments. So this is like match play, just out of the book match play, but there's also going to be like tournament match play, and there's going to be stuff like that, which is crazy awesome. And Theo, yes. And David, yes, definitely. Is the power level for all the units including the book? No, they are not, Couch Warrior. So power level points are not really in this book. We'll get to the appendix and the glossary at the back and stuff like that, and all the Crusade rules and things like that. So basic rules. So these are just concepts. You have your army, what an army is, what a data sheet is, how keywords work, what a unit is, right? What does that mean? Very simple, straightforward stuff. The big change within unit coherency, as well as the most important rule, says, says when to have a chat with your opponent and apply the solution that makes the most sense to both of you or seems the most fun. If no solution presents itself, just roll off and get on with playing the game. So I kind of like that. Unit coherency, 2 inches horizontally, 5 inches vertically. So we kind of saw that. Which hints at actually engagement range is 2 inches horizontally now and 5 inches vertically, which means if you're on the second floor of ruins or anything like that, you can actually fight 5 inches up, which makes it a lot easier to sort of like attack and things like that as well, which is pretty cool. So that's engagement range right here. So this is engagement is 1 inch and 5. And you cannot set up within engagement range of enemy models, essentially. Battlefield, what that is, terrain features, how you measure distances, what wobbly model is, so you measure distances now pretty much from base to base or from base to hull is kind of how that works. So, or from base to hull is any part of a vehicle model, essentially. Hey, Rod, how's it going? Yeah, 1 inch M cannon. Sorry, I misspoke there. But its coherency is 2 inches. And then, of course, your bigger units are now going to have to be in coherency with more models, so it's going to clump up units a little bit more. But units that are low in number of models, but high in like big bases will begin around units of 5, so they can really kind of spread out in the battlefield, there's a whole bunch of really interesting dynamics there as well. They also explain what within and wholly within is, which is always like what does within mean? What does wholly within mean? Etc., etc. James says, are you now allowed to share all the various detachments? Oh yeah, I'll be going through all the detachments. I'll be going through all that stuff. Just hold tight. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. It'll be a fun little journey in Warhammer 40,000 9th edition. So it does say, technically, when you roll dice, you roll one dice at a time. However, it does say if you have a bunch of things that are the same, just roll them the same. You know what I mean? Like it says, it does say modifiers are applied in the following order: division, multiplication, addition, then subtraction, which means your +1 strength power fist is now strength 9 officially, and not strength 10, because it's like math, and math works in a specific way. So that's a cool addition. They just cleared that up. There's no more, is it to multiply, divide, subtract, where does I add? No, it's you divide, then you multiply, then you add, then you subtract, right? Which is math. So I kind of like that they put that in. And you can never modify a dice to less than a 1, and round fractions up after modifiers have been applied, which is cool. Vanguard Spearhead, no more Catagem Power Fists at strength 8. Yeah, definitely. Bedmus. Well, I love it. And then we've got rerolls. So a reroll is just reroll dice again. Rerolls are applied before modifiers, if any. So you reroll before any modifiers. You can never reroll a dice more than once. And result of a roll after rerolls before modifiers for unmodified dice. So I love that they're clarifying all these little nuances in the rules that people always sort of like assumed were the case, but never had like legitimate basing in the rules. And they're just writing it all off. What a roll-off is and how that works, how sequencing works. The player whose turn it is chooses the order to resolve sequencing issues. And then we have starting strength, half strength, and destroyed units. So some rules, for example, will trigger if an enemy unit was destroyed, or if a model unit from your army. This means that the last model of the enemy unit is destroyed by an attack made by a model in your army, or was destroyed because it fled the battlefield, or was destroyed by a mortal wound, inflicted by a rule that is using, or was destroyed as a result of any other rule that a model in the army is using that explicitly states that an enemy model is outright destroyed. Enemy units that are destroyed by any other means are not destroyed by you or by a unit or model from your army. Interesting. So they're very specific of what counts as a destroyed unit. So if you have to destroy a certain unit, what counts as you destroying the unit and what doesn't count as you destroying the unit, which has led to interesting questions sometimes, which is fun. Hey, David, what's going on? Steven, how's it going? So they did not fix rerolls. Sad face. Rerolls should happen after modifiers. I feel like them happening before modifiers is a fix, because after modifiers, it just made a lot of the reroll mechanics just better. Now of course you just have chapter masters, which don't care, but they're space marines after all, so they get all the special treatment. So we go into data sheets, abilities and aura abilities. Right? So it kind of explains like what that is and how that works, how to modify characteristics, essentially what keywords work. And then we dive into the actual sort of battle round. So there are now 7 phases. The command phase, which they explain here, you get, if you're battle forged, you get a CP bonus, basically every command phase. It also explains out of phase rules, like things that happen not in a phase and how that works. Your movement, psychic, all that stuff hasn't really changed. So in terms of, hello, Zakar, how's it going? I like the new legend key for the data sheets. Legend key? Yeah. How's this different? Seems about the same. They might have changed it a little bit. And then morale and whatnot. And that's pretty cool. So in the movement phase, it's pretty simple. You move your units, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of moves, essentially, which is a normal move, so move, an advance, remaining stationary is like a state, because you have to declare like basically what your units are doing, and remaining stationary is one of the things your units can do, right? And then fall back, and kind of how that works. And that's it. That hasn't really changed at all. Although some of the interactions, like deep striking and whatnot, says you cannot deep strike and then do a normal move, advance, or remain stationary when you deep strike. But then it doesn't bring in stuff like, like what Fire and Fade does, for example. So now can you Fire and Fade off your Deep Strike? So I'm really curious to see how the FAQs come out for all the different factions, right? Eduardo says, we are jealous here. Don't be jealous. You'll have it soon. And then you'll be able to feel it and touch it and smell it. So then we have how reinforcements work. Unit that starts the battle in a location other than the battlefield. That's a unit of reinforcements. Then you set up units. So here we go. They cannot make a normal move, advance, etc. They always count as moving when they come in. If they don't come in by the end of the game, they're destroyed. And etc. And then they also go into like units that get redeployed basically count as reinforcements, then trigger things that would trigger off of reinforcements. So like Black Cornucopians, for example, with Rex will then trigger ITDP. Thanks for your subscription on Twitch with Prime. Thank you. Really appreciate it as well. And how you can Auspex scan and stuff can then be used on stuff like that. So moving over terrain, how that works. So now you just ignore all terrain features that are an inch in height. But other than that, you have to measure up and measure down, like the distance that you're physically moving, if it's more than an inch in height. But other than that, you just ignore it for movement purposes. And then fly models, basically flying changes, you cannot fall back and basically act as normal anymore. You just ignore terrain when you're moving and then when you're charging, essentially. Yes, all these basic rules. Hello, Jacob. How's it going? All these basic rules are up on the GW site. So then they go into transports and transport capacity and stuff like that. Now, you have to sort of, you'll get to this in the missions, but you have to sort of declare what units are in what transports before you start deploying. So you can't just randomly choose to not deploy your stuff in transports because now it's advantageous not to, which is interesting. But they also, you have to be wholly within embarking units. So you can embark within 3 inches, but when you disembark, the unit has to be wholly within 3 inches of the transport. And now, of course, they have an emergency disembarkation, which is like a CP, and you can now disembark if it's destroyed within 6 inches. So it's hard for somebody to explode your transport and then kill all the models inside. There are no info really on dedicated transports. So the only thing that it's kind of said is that units cannot do anything or be affected in any way while they are embarked, unless specifically stated. Abilities have no effect on units while they're embarked. Stratagems cannot be used while they're embarked. For all rules purposes, units that are embarked with a transport that made a normal move, advance, fallen back, or restationary also count as having made the same kind of move that turn. So other than that, it says they're just not affected in any way unless otherwise stated. And which means that I'm assuming now, if the transport's stuck in combat, the unit inside is not stuck in combat, but he can't shoot at the unit in combat that's in combat with the transport, might be able to shoot out to something else. So I'm curious to see the FAQ on this one, especially because Dark Eldar, for example, lots of open top transports, right? So Skari are strats like Berserker, Rhino Rush still viable? Things like having to pay for disembark now? You don't have to pay for disembark. You just have to. You can pay for an emergency disembark to disembark further away from your transport. Now, you can still disembark normally within wholly within 3 inches. So you can't CP reroll an open top shooter. No, you cannot CP reroll anything. They basically you can't. No, you could never because it's a stratagem. You can't put it on something that's in a transport. Oh snap! Scar got the hookup with the main rulebook. I have it's arrived. Blue Cloud Andrew. I know, kind of cool, right? Okay, let's move on to aircraft. Aircraft are pretty much almost exactly the same as 8th edition. The biggest difference here is the engagement range. You can't heroically intervene to aircraft and stuff. You don't count aircraft for being the closest model for pylons and consolidates unless you have the fly keyword, essentially. And they do say you can kind of fly off the table if you can just go into strategic reserve essentially if you fly off the table. And then we go to the psychic phase. So Smite hasn't really changed. The biggest change in the psychic phase is number one, you cannot fall back and cast psychic powers anymore. So if you tag like a psyker, if he falls back to try to get away from you beating him up, he's not going to be able to cast psychic powers anymore. That's a big change in a lot of ways. And secondly is once you select a psyker to cast psychic powers, you have to cast all the psychic powers you're going to be casting with that psyker before you move on to the next one. So it stops the bouncing back and forth from unit to unit, being like, hey, let's bounce back and forth and trying to get the like best options that we have, or trying to like bait you out with a power here or there. Like if you need to stop warp time and your opponent starts casting with the guy that has warp time, right? Then it's going to come up. So you're going to like want to re-roll it and stuff there, right? Or try and deny it or whatnot. Aquaflan, so jealous you have the set already. Oh, well, thanks, buddy. Yeah, well, I'm so grateful that GW sends me the stuff, and and I love sharing how cool all this stuff is with everybody out there. So that's the least I can do. So psychic test, etc. So how denies the witch is pretty much the exact same as you remember from last time. Just the biggest thing there is you have to pick a psyker and finish the psyker, right? And then you have to like you can't fall back and cast psychic powers. So then we go into the shooting phase. So if you fall back or advance, you can't shoot. But Titanic units are, of course, exempt from this because they're big and shooty. Pick a unit, shoot at a unit, make all your ranged weapons, select a unit, and then shoot with that, etc. And one of the biggest things they say here is you can essentially, when you declare a target, it says shoot all the same weapons now. So instead of being like, well, now I need the meltagun, no, you shoot all of the same type of weapons at once. So if you have bolters, meltagun, you can't just do 4 bolters to like get a unit's wound off and then the 1 meltagun. You have to do all the bolters, then the meltagun, right? So it kind of simplifies that. And you can't shoot into combat. Ranged weapons have different attacks, etc. and whatnot. And then you go into the different types of weapons, which haven't really changed. Biggest change here is infantry model shooting a heavy weapon, and you have to remain stationary, but if any part of an infantry unit moves, then it's -1 to hit the heavy weapon. So it's no longer that if the heavy weapon model stays stationary, then it can shoot. It's literally like if you move any part of the unit, then the heavy weapon is -1 to hit. So it's definitely interesting. Good day, Speed Racer. What's going on? Is there an errata that gives stipulation on when planes can drop bombs? It seems, as it stands, there hasn't been anything. There might be something in the core, like in the FAQs, but as it stands right now, you could just fly off the board and drop a bomb. However, the AdMech bomber, for example, it's an ability that happens at the end of the shooting phase, right? So if the plane isn't on the board, then you can't be selected to do that. So it's interesting. So I'm curious to see what the FAQ says. Gunner says, is this the 9th ed rulebook? Oh, yeah. Who knew? We're talking 9th today. No problem, you're shorty. It'll be here. It'll be recorded, so you can always come back and check it out. So thanks for coming by. Grenades, pistols. Of course, grenades now are like, a lot of them are blast weapons and whatever. Pistols can shoot in engagement range, which is cool. Monsters and vehicles can shoot into combat. They've sort of revealed all of this from before. I love how Lookoutser works and how blast weapons work as well. Lookoutser is very interesting. You have to really protect your characters in 9th edition. So, which is pretty cool. Really, really exciting. And that's like super, super pumped for that. Thank you. May have to get that second Void Raven. Ah, yes. It depends how many points they are, but I already have 2. Is this your favorite edition so far? I love change, and I love how this game makes you play differently. So it's super fun. I really enjoy it. So then we have how to make attacks. You have a hit roll, your wound roll, which is about the same. Biggest thing here, though, is like they had previewed that your modifiers to hit are capped at +1 or -1. The same with wound modifiers. Your wound modifiers are capped at -1 or +1. Very interesting. Which also means that like a Venom Blade that has +2 to wound infantry now is capped at +1 to wound. So it's poison with plus wounds. So now wounds on 3s. So maybe they'll just change it to poison 2+, or something like that. What is my favorite new rule? My favorite new rule is, well, they're not really new rules, but I really like the new changes to how charging works. Like, if you can't make the charge to if you can't physically engage all the units that you declared as a charge, your charge fails. I think that changes a lot of how we play the game. Eduardo says, I'm outraged that the Judicar has a Vexator Mask rule. Meh, whatever. Our codex will come out soon and we'll have some fancy new stuff too. 148 people and only 23 likes. We're better than that. Yeah, that's right. Why haven't you clicked that like button yet? Come on, folks. Catch me a break here. I've been YouTubing for 8 years, and some of these guys have been doing it for like a year or like 50,000 subscribers, and I'm still at 17,000. No, I love every single one of you. Plus, I'm a very niche market because I do a lot of Dark Eldar stuff. Going to Sweet, picking off a carelessly exposed foe was Lieutenant. Thanks for the follow, ITDP. Really appreciate it. You also don't have to charge the Heroic Intervention characters, as you can target Heroic Intervention even if you didn't charge them. That is also correct. Whoa, that new cap is going to change the game a lot. It is. White Wing Devil says, I just got here. Well, welcome. I'm on Periscope, so I can't. Well, that's okay. Periscope, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. I love all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so wound rolls, allocating attacks, saving throws, how to do damage. Damage really hasn't changed. Now, a really cool thing about allocating an attack, something that's a very subtle change, is when you get attacked by a specific unit and you allocate a specific model to start taking hits for that attack, that model has to continue taking saves until it dies or if it passes all its saves, which means you can no longer go, oh, is that guy shooting, like say you had a Deathwatch unit and you've got Storm Shields and the Terminator. As soon as you start putting wounds on the Terminator has to continue taking wounds for the rest of that phase until it dies or you remove it as a casual or it passes all its saves. So you can't just bounce back and forth from save to save, to kind of get the best save against your opponent. And I think that's a really cool but very subtle change to how to allocate attacks. And it took me like the third time reading it for it to like pop out in my brain and be like, oh wow, that's a really subtle change. So hello Brian, how's it going? Hello Robbie, hello. How would that work with Shock Jump Dragster, where the data sheet says +2 to the hit roll for Shock Rifle? You just get +1 to the hit roll. But if you're shooting at something that has -1, then you still get +1, right? So it kind of it helps. It makes sense. Hope Green Tide is still playable. Love playing Goths and have a new Gazgul model. Nice. I hope so. I mentioned charge rules a moment ago. Yeah, we'll go directly into charging in a second. And this shows you how to fast dice roll, just like roll all the hit rolls at once, etc. Then we have Invulnerable Saves. They're never modified by the AP, and you can use an Invulnerable Save instead of your normal save, but you get to choose. You can choose your normal save or your Invulnerable Save, whichever one you want. And then we have how mortal wounds happen. They happen at the end, and they stack, right? So that hasn't really changed. Hey, Nick, working from home, but saw you, so I thought I'd join. Thanks for coming on. Nice to see you. So then we have ignoring wounds. Says you can only use one rule to attempt to ignore wounds. So if you have multiple like ignore wounds rules, you only get to use one. This is a whole bunch of stuff that was FAQ'd onto 8th edition that essentially is now physically in the main core rulebook as well. I hope demon deployment gets some love in the future. Hopefully. Wait, so you don't have to use your best save? Oh no. No. You never have to use your best save. You get to choose what save you want to use. Have you not watched any of my battle reports? If a bunch of people shoot pistols at me, I'm always rolling armor saves on my Archon. And then when he's at 1 wound remaining, then I start taking Shadowfield saves. So I just maximize the mathematics on that and try not to roll on the Shadowfield for as long as possible until I absolutely have to. Because as soon as that Shadowfield is gone, no more Shadowfield, right? So, hey Luke, how's it going? Is that the new 9th book? Yes it is. Yes it is. Never thought about that, said Theo. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff. Like, for example, sometimes if you're in combat and you need to have models die because you don't want to get wrapped or whatever, You say someone's attacking my racks. My racks have a 6+ armor save and a 4+ invulnerable save. I don't have to take the invulnerable save. So if somebody comes in swinging and I need to kill multiple models to prevent them from getting wrapped or to force my opponent to like stay still or be in the open, I can take the saves on the 6-ups and hope that most of them die. And then if I pass a save, I can always re-roll it and then be like, now I can fail the save. So there's lots of ways to like have your units die. Now you can use things like coherency, being out of coherency and casualty removal to make sure specific models and units die. Like, say somebody has the contorted epitome, which is like, going to prevent you from falling back. Right now, you can just remove casualties and keep units out of coherency, and then basically kill models out of coherency with a coherency check to make sure that now you're out of the epitome's aura, you're not within range of that and stuff. So there's lots of cool ways to use making sure that your models die to gain an advantage in games. So any new lore in the book? Yes, we talked about the lore at the beginning. Lots and lots of lore in this book. Genius. Shadowfield use. How have I not noticed that before? Yeah, it has. It's something that you get for being a seasoned Archon like myself. This must mean that this box is pre-order this coming Saturday. Am I wrong? It's pre-ordered on the 11th. It was there was a whole bunch of leaks. So GW was like, go forth and spread the good word. So we weren't supposed to show you this yet. So I'm glad. Thank you, GW, for lifting the embargo. We get to talk to you folks about really cool stuff and how this is all working and whatnot. No problem, Ben. We'll see you in a bit. Okay, so more cool, fun. I always like trying to look like in the backs and stuff of these things. Seeing if I see any cool like new pieces of terrain or whatever. Okay, so let me go into the charge phase. So the charge phase really hasn't changed. You can declare charge to any unit within 12, same as before. You roll a charge unit. However, you have to be in engagement range of every unit that you declare a charge against. So if you declare charge against 3 units with 1 model, you have to make sure you end within an engagement range of all 3 units. Hey, Scary, good to see you. First thoughts on the new edition? Different game, very fun to play, fast-paced, highly benefits people who like playing the mission. Yeah. Really smart move by Games Workshop, 100%. Yes, sorry again. Absolutely. Now you get to actually see it from the source instead of all these potato cameras. Like, 9th edition was like a ball of energy, and it just couldn't be contained, and it exploded everywhere. So now we get to have fun and talk to you folks about all this as well. Okay, personally, I hope they nerf the Archon's 2+ save to 3+ save. No, 2+ save. It's been like that since 3rd edition, since before then. No, this 2+ save. It is the best and worst save in the world. Then we have Heroic Intervention. Same thing. You can do it within 3 or 5 vertically. You can basically move up and down, and then performing Heroic Intervention. You have to end close to a nearest enemy model. Biggest thing here is you no longer have to declare a charge against the character to attack him if they heroically intervene. So if a character heroically intervenes into your unit, you can attack him or her even though you didn't declare a charge specifically against that character, which is a big deal, right? Yeah, I always fail my second one every time, 100%. Chapter proved. So you had the rulebook all along. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Can you talk about the rules? Aaron, I am talking about the rules. This is me talking about the rules. Thank you, Grandmo, for the follow on Twitch. Really appreciate it. So then we have charging over terrain. You ignore terrain features 1 inch or less in height as if they're not there. You can move up and down. You basically have to move distance. Of course, there's terrain features like breachable, which means that infantry and beasts and cavalry can move through it like walls and stuff. So you can kind of do that as well. When did this stream start? Have I missed much? Says Ryan. Started about half an hour ago. Yeah, it'll be recorded, so you can always go back and rewatch it if you did miss the beginning of the video. Makes perfect sense to be able to attack the intervening character. 100%. You have a big giant demon prince being like, "Rah!" And they're like, no, we don't want to attack him. We We specifically said that we didn't want to attack this big character that's going to murder us all. Talk about the rules, says Mark. I am talking about the rules. Charging over terrain, then flying when charging. Basically, you can move over models when you make a charge move. Now, this is important. Not when you heroic intervene, not when things like that. So it's only when you make a charge move. So it's only when you move and when you make a charge move. So no flying heroic intervention moves, no flying consolidation moves, no flying pile-in moves, essentially. How will the new edition benefit demons? Oh, we'll see. We'll see about points. Points are going to be a big deal. Does the rulebook have a different binding like the one they announced for Chapter Approved? Well, I don't know. I have no idea. Were the leaks from playtesters, watermarks? Harvey, I have no idea who the leaks came from. Drew Prattley, hello. Creepy Uncle Scary, it's me. I am Creepy Uncle Scary. This is maybe I've covered, but any word on price points? Price points? Nope, have no idea. Can you fly when falling back? Yes, because that is a move, right? So you can make a move, which one of the types of moves is a fallback, right? Hardcore intervention if the Storm Shield changes, Space Wolves players in trouble. We'll see. Happy Canada Day. Thanks. Really appreciate it, Drew. Then we have Overwatch. So Overwatch, basically, before charge roll is made, you can fire an Overwatch. You cannot fire Overwatch while enemy units are in engagement range, and you hit on unmodified 6s. That's another big change. Unmodified roll of a 1 always misses, and an unmodified roll of a 6 always hits, essentially. So that's pretty straightforward. Is the focus mainly on power level or points to measure armies in the new core rulebook? Both power level and points. They actually have a thing was like power level versus points, and they kind of have a cool little explanation of both types as well. Then we have the fight phase. So this is one of the more subtle changes to the new rules. However, one of the most important changes. The order of modifiers is how it is in 8th right now. This doesn't change character power for strength 8. Character modifies strength. Characteristic power takes strength and produces weapon strength. It's actually we'll see how that works, but as it stands, they said you divide, multiply, add, and subtract in that order. So we have starting with your opponent, select alternating units to fight with. So now it's the person whose turn it isn't to select the first unit to fight. If a player has 1 or more units left to fight with their opponent, go to morale phase. So charging units first. Units that made a charge move this turn, fight first, essentially. So remember that this means that units that have the always fight first rule, like Slanesh or Inari, for example, suddenly become a little bit more powerful because your opponent gets to pick the first ones to fight first. So if you charge, a lot of the times those fight first things say charging and always fight first is like the same thing. So it means that if somebody charges your demonettes are going first, which is really cool. Like it really changes a lot of the close combat dynamics with units in close combat. And in practice, when we've been doing the 40k as you know it battle reports, which the new one dropped today against Chaos Knights, having that dichotomy of well, if I don't fall back from this combat right now, I'm going to charge over here and attack over here first. But then this combat over here, where I don't really want to fall back, but my opponent's going to get to swing at me first, which means they're going to get the chance to kill my unit. And that sort of choice you have to make is very, very interesting too. So it makes charging important, and it makes choosing whether or not to fall back, even though fallback has a lot more repercussions in this edition, because fly doesn't really help fall back and things like that. Fly doesn't let you fall back and shoot automatically anymore. So it's not like the be-all end-all keyword that it was in 8th edition as well. So I like starting with your opponent. You get more me, you, instead of exactly. So it's cool. And they changed the stratagem to interrupt, where you can now interrupt after your opponent has activated a unit, which means you can physically use it in both turns now. You can't only use the interrupt when your opponent charges, which is cool. So then you fight. So you pile in. move up to 3 inches, and you have to end closer to the closest enemy model. Then you make your close combat attacks. And this is another big difference, is when you fight, a model can fight if it's engagement range of an enemy unit. A model can fight if it's within half an inch of another model from your own unit that's within half an inch of an enemy model. So you can be within an inch and fight, but if you want the back rank to fight, you have to be within half an inch of the model, and the other model has to be within half an inch of that model. So they've reduced the amount of models that can attack in close combat, and if you want to get stuck in, you have to really get sort of like clumped up and stuck in to get multiple ranks of combat to go in there. Whoa, what do you say about initiative? Initiative hasn't been a thing for 2 editions yet. That's not a thing. If you charge, still attack first. Every charge unit attacks, then the opponent. Yes, then your opponent gets to it. So you charge, all the charges go first, but then always strike first counts as charging, so you alternate. But then it's the person whose turn it isn't picks the first unit, essentially. So it's really cool. For the new rules affecting monsters, do you think it'll improve the effectiveness of Talos? Yeah, I think so. So essentially clarifying the wording about 2 ranks in Final CC. Yeah, so it's you can fight within engagement range, or if you're within half an inch of a model that's within half an inch. And half an inch is like really small. So if you really want to get a bunch of attacks in, you have to clump in and really sort of commit to a fight, essentially. So then we have the number of attacks. And how many attacks you say is just look at your attack profile, etc. You select your targets. It does say you can split your attacks and stuff, but you have to split all the attacks before any attacks are rolled. You can select your weapons. Now, this is another subtle change. Before you could just pick any weapon. So if you're a Gene Stealer that had Rending Claws, you could always choose to just use the regular close combat weapon to prevent yourself from killing enemy models in close combat. But in this case, it now says if a model is not equipped with a melee weapon, or if it cannot make an attack with the melee weapons it is equipped with, then you can use a close combat weapon which has the following profile. Which means that if you have a melee weapon, you're going to use that melee weapon. The knight that you're fighting cannot choose to not use its stompy feet and use a strength user AP0 damage 1 close combat attack, which is something they could do in 8th edition, which makes sense. It's a subtle change, but it does mean that you're going to be attacking with your close combat weapons when you run into close combat, which is kind of how that works. So it just means, Caliph, that if you have 1 rank, you can fight within an inch. If you have a back rank that wants to fight, the front rank has to be really close, and the back rank has to be close. So essentially, it stops people from doing the conga lines and stringing out. I mean, if you really want to get in there and attack strongly, you have to really get in there and attack. AK Guy, Bob the Knight, thank you very much for the follows. Really appreciate it. Hello, Davis. What is going on? Can I picture a knight lap fighting? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. Be like, I have the most strongest thunder hammer in all the land, or the big knight. That's my favorite. Oh, I have 4 attacks at strength user, no AP, because I have a basic close combat weapon. Try pointing is going to be hard to pull off now. Yes, it is definitely going to be hard. However, because of the terrain rules, it's going to be easier to get your close combat units into position. And the size of the table makes it easier for you to get in, but you still and then tying things up is still very important. It's just different now. It's just very, very different. And then you have your weapons, you attack with them, then you have your consolidations, which is move up to 3 inches again. Extra movement is always really strong, still very, very strong in this. And then we go to the last phase of the game, which is the morale phase. So first you take a morale test. If you've watched any of the battle reports we've done, it was pretty straightforward. You take a morale test, modify, so you D6 plus the amount of casualties you took. If that result is over your leadership, you fail morale. Now, before, you would lose a model for each point you failed morale by. So big units, 20 or more models, you killed 8, and then it would be like, well, my leadership is 8, so I'm losing D6 models. So it was very all or nothing. Now, it doesn't matter how much you lose the morale test by, you always just lose 1 model when you fail. So if you fail, it doesn't matter how much by, you just fail it. So it's super quick. You don't have to think, oh, how many did I lose by, et cetera, et cetera. No, you just take a model off and you roll what's called an attrition test. And in a combat attrition test, you basically roll a dice for every other model in the unit. And on a 1, they die, they run away, or something has happened that has caused them to be ineffective in the game. Kind of like jumping out of an exploding transport. essentially. If the unit is under 50% strength, they will run on 1s and 2s, which means if you had a 30-man unit or a 30 strong cultist unit or a grot unit or something, if you lost 28 of them, in the old rules they'd automatically fail, run away. In the new rules, you're going to fail, so one of them runs away, and then on a 3+, the other model stays, which means that units that aren't wiped out have a high likelihood of sticking around and continuing to fight, which I really like. I think that really changes the dynamic of morale, makes it more relevant, but also means that your units just don't get completely screwed, pardon my language, if they have lots of models to start with and take a pounding, right? Which is really interesting as well. Yes, it is. The whole rule set is very intuitive, and I really like it. How difficult is it to assemble the Tantalus and Reaper? It takes some time, but you scrub it good, paint it, it's good. Oh hell, it's trying to learn 8th. Well, now you don't have to. Forget 8th. Now play 9th. The 20-man blob now can't get in and hit as much, thus hurting larger squads. Well, it depends on how big your bases are. Like, there's a lot more to it than just the combat. And once you get to the missions are all about getting points. So it's a lot less, like, yes, the game is lethal. Yes, your stuff dies. But it's all about getting those points. It's crazy, crazy important. So that's super important as well. Auto pass as usual. Pardon my language, you are very polite. Well, I tried to be. And then we have the new last bit of the turn, and this is new. This is a coherency check. Now, this has been added in. It's very similar to what they've had in Age of Sigmar for a very, very long time, since the beginning. But if you have to remove any models from units in your army that are not within coherency, once all out of coherence models have been removed, the morale phase ends. And that's it. So, essentially, if you take casualties, and casualties allow the unit to be out of coherency, then you have to keep on removing models until the unit is back in coherency. So no more will you have one objective on this side of the board, 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 with a unit of gaunts strung up and basically touching all the objectives. And as you shoot them, you remove all the ones in the middle, and you have one gaunt on this objective, one gaunt on this objective. That's not going to happen anymore. Now, like, the models will die until they're back in coherency. So units have to sort of fight as a unit, which is very, very important. Moro Broly, thanks for the follow. Really appreciate it as well, which is really nice. So this coherency rule is fantastic. AOS is so much better for having this. I agree. And this is very important. And it's one of the things that has caught me off the most while playing, like, and testing the rules and stuff, has been, applying this rule. Because, if you have 5 models in your unit, you don't care. You just have to make sure that you can't take casualties from the middle of the unit anymore. You basically have, like, units are going to sort of shrink from the outwards in as you take casualties, because you want to keep them in coherency. So instead of looking at zones of influence as big lines and have, like, a line and then another line and then another line, you have to look at, like, how the unit will influence the table in more of a bubble. So now you'll have, like, a bubble. So this unit in a bubble, this unit in a bubble. And you can still string them out, but it'll be like fatter lines instead of, like, very thin lines that sort of, like, wiggle all around. And, it's crazy like that. So, big fan of the new coherency. Was starting to get sick of my friend's Gretchen swamping the board. There you go, Matt. That's the thing, right? So, yeah. So I think units that are 5 strong with big bases, like bikes and stuff, will still be very useful for board control and zoning and screening, which is kind of what they're supposed to be used for anyway. And then units that are, like, clumpy, big blobs, they're going to stick around for a long time as well. So and basically be annoying to get rid of. Well, now we have the core rules, so there will not be any. Yeah, exactly. Speed Racer, unless you just for once use that Death Jester ability to choose which one runs away. That's another cool thing. Abilities like that specifically target models to die is incredibly powerful with a unit, with a rule like this. Like, if you fail a morale test and you've been shot by a Death Jester, and the Death Jester goes, you know what? You know who I want to make run away? I'm going to make the guy in the middle run away. And now your unit's completely out of coherency. And now you're going to lose all these extra models because you're out of coherency. Super powerful rule mechanic. So How do you interpret the new saving throws? AP subtracted from saving throw, but it can't be modified below 1, therefore rolling 2 Terminators. What? Yeah, sure. So you natural 1. That's always been the case. When you retreat from a fight, does the enemy get to hit you? No. There's a stratagem that allows you to spend a command point to do mortal wounds to a unit that's falling back. Really handy if a unit has like 1 or 2 wounds left, and you're like, if you fall back from me, that's actually happened to me. Yesterday, because that stratagem has been previewed, so we're using it in a game I played yesterday, and I was fighting Ragnar with some grotesques, and Ragnar had 1 wound left, and there were 3 or 4 grotesques in combat with him. They were just waiting to punch him, and so Ragnar's like, I really want to run away from this combat, but if I do, and you use that command point, and you roll a 6 on any of those dice, and he dies because he ran away from combat, I'll never live it up. I was like, you better not run, you better fight. And then Ragnar lived and got saved by his buddies, and oh man, it was a crazy good game. Take another crack at that question, Ragnar. How do you interpret? Yeah, it was just a very confusing question. Have you covered detachments yet? Void Wraith, I have not. I'm almost there. We're into the missions now, which is exciting. So that kind of goes into building and whatnot. Oh, you want to run away from my 30 Witch Cult, Mr. Knight? However, it's only you only roll 1 dice for every model in engagement range. So you'd have to get quite a few models within an inch to then roll lots of dice if they run away, essentially. But yes, you can definitely pop that strat, and it's really fun. Any news on point changes? Sadly, not yet, but stay tuned, because as soon as I have information that I'm allowed to talk about, I will be bringing all this cool stuff to you as well. Thank you very much, Dirty Splodge, for the follow on Twitch. Okay, so let's talk about missions. So mission instructions, you basically build your army, you read your mission briefing, which is like read the mission. Basically says, don't forget to read your mission and what the objectives are. Create the battlefield, deploy your forces, determine the first turn, resolve your battle rules, begin the battle, end the game, determine the victor. So it's very simple, like this is how to play the mission. Great. What do objective markers work? So now they've been very clear. An objective marker is a 40 millimeter circle. It is a Terminator base, which is cool because now you can kind of go back in the day when I started playing. If you want to go to a tournament, you had to have cool objective markers that were like themed to your army, and that's back again, which is super exciting. I cannot wait to make some really cool themed objective markers, put them on the table, have some really neat like stories to tell as we fight over these cool little objective markers. And you measure them so within 3 inches of that marker. So the edge of the marker you measure 3 inches and 5 inches vertically, which is great, which actually tells you exactly how far up you can be from the objective to score it and how far across from the objective you can score it. So they cleared the whole, is it a cylinder that's infinitely high, shit like that. No, it's 5 inches vertically, 3 inches horizontally. Done. That's it. There's no gray area there, and I love that. Christian, yeah, the shooting phase we'll talk about. It'll be recorded, so you can go back to it as well. Okay, so then we have objective secured, which is basically every army has a version of this, which is like troops in your detachment gain this rule where they can score objectives regardless of who's scoring it, essentially. So they've kind of clarified that. Nothing crazy. So then we have the only war mission. This is the mission that they previewed. This is free to download right now from the GW website. But it's basically just like a basic mission. Show up, play a friend. It's like an open. We'll just kind of put models on the table, roll some dice. That's pretty much what this is. Nothing super crazy. What about monsters? Should be able to hit things on a box? Yes, because engagement range is now 5 inches vertically, so you can punch things 5 inches up from the ground. So yes, you can walk up to something that has a floor that's 3 to 5 inches tall or whatever and punch them because you measure from the base 5 inches up. You can hit them now. So knights can crush everything on the second floor of that building, which is super fun. Yeah, it's a really cool intro mission. Nothing crazy, super fun. And then we had a question in chat about power rating versus points. And here they basically explain power rating versus points and how and what they are designed to do and how they work. Also, they add a whole thing about reinforcement points and how that works, and how you have to pay points to add stuff in match play to bring stuff into your army, and how recycling units doesn't cost points, but if you're adding units to an existing squad, that doesn't add points unless specified otherwise, etc., etc. So it's very clearly updated, and I really like that as well. Make sure they say Shuryoken when they punch things on the floor above you. Just make 6-inch full levels and be safe from knights, Valerie. Correct. However, then, it'd be a whole mess, wouldn't it? But yeah, you could definitely make buildings that are 6 inches high and be like, haha, knights. Yeah, whatever. There's always ways to game the system. How hard is it going to be to charge units of 6 models in coherency and attacking with everyone? It's okay. It's not bad once you actually put it into practice. It's not terrible. Hope the app comes out not too long after the points. Yes, I cannot wait for the app. So let me go into Battle Forged armies and how to build your Battle Forged army. So a Battle Forged army is organized into detachments. Essentially, you basically tells you how many command points you get for how big the army is. Pretty straightforward. It does say that you gain a command point at the start of the command phase, and that's not that doesn't max out. But if you have anything that regenerates command points, you max out at once per battle round. So that's from 8th edition. It transferred over nicely. You also say that all detachments have to share a faction keyword. Now, in this case, it does say you can use the faction keyword Imperium to make a detachment. So technically, you could mix and match all these cool Imperium stuff again. However, a lot of armies gain a lot of cool benefits for being a lot more focused in their keywords, like Adepts Astartes or Ultramarines or whatever. So, and then your army faction also has to have like a keyword, a faction keyword in common. So Imperium or Chaos or whatever. You can't just have like a detachment from different factions. So they just make that clear, essentially. Soup. Yeah, you can still soup. Soup is still a thing. So then we jump into the detachments. Now, so 500 points, you have 1 detachment. 1,000 points, you have 2 detachments. 2,000 points, so 1,001 to 2,000 points is 3 detachments, and then 2,000 plus is 4 detachments. And you basically have to pay for your detachments to make your list. And each detachment might have special abilities, which does tell us that they might release like specific detachments for factions, in the future. And then you've got reinforcement units, as in summoned units or things like that come in. They don't belong to any specific detachment. They're very specific about that as well. So there you go. That's a new rule. Finally. Okay, cool. M Cannon. So then we have battlefield roles, right? So HQ troops, elites, fast, flyer, heavy, fortification, dedicated transport, lords of war, and it says basically you can only ever have as many dedicated transports as you have infantry units in a detachment. So I used to love taking 1 Archon, 3 Ravagers, and 2 Planes, and that was 6 units. So I could take 6 Venoms in that detachment, even though I only had 1 Archon. That's not the case anymore. You have to have an infantry unit for a dedicated transport. Pretty simple stuff. Now, it doesn't mean that the infantry unit has to be able to go into that specific dedicated transport. It just means they have to have a 1-to-1 ratio. It's not bad. Then we have restrictions, command costs, command benefits. And then we dive into, is Air Wing still a thing? No. Air Wing is gone. It is done. Gonzo. It is no more. It is pushing up the daisies. It is a late detachment. So, there we go. These are the main detachments. There are 9 detachments in total. Oh no, 10, 11 detachments in total. So your patrol, your battalion, and your brigade, they're your standard ones. 2 command points, 3 command points, 4 command points. And if your warlord is part of these detachments, you get the CP back. Pretty straightforward, very, very simple. Then we have the Vanguard, Spearhead, and Outrider. As you remember them, know them, but they're 3 command points each. So taking one of those costs the same as a battalion, and if your warlord is part of them, and they can never give you your command points back, essentially. So if you want to like stack up on fast attack and stack up on heavy support and all that good stuff, it's going to cost you command points to do so as well. Is there a detachment that lets you take a single Lord of War? Yes, there is. We'll get to that in a second. Master of the Horde, thank you for the follow on Twitch. Really appreciate it. HQ counts as infantry, so you can still take loads of Venoms, but your attacks in HQs. Well, yeah, if I took 1 Archon, I could take 1 Venom, right? So, etc. Okay, so then we have the Supreme Command Detachment. Now, this is one that a lot of people have been talking about. It's a little different than what it was. So you don't have like a whole bunch of stuff to take. You basically take one Primarch, one Demon Primarch, or one Supreme Commander. Now, the Supreme Commander is a keyword. We do not know what models or units will gain the Supreme Commander keyword, but I could assume things like Logan Grimnar, Gazgul, Thraka, etc., like big, hefty unit HQs. But it's a single model, and it costs 0 command points. If you take the Supreme Command Detachment, that model that's in there has to be your Warlord, because you can only take one Supreme Command Detachment. It has to be your Warlord, and if he's the same faction as a battalion, a patrol, or a brigade in your army, then you get the CP refunded. So it basically gives you the refund on a brigade, a patrol, or a battalion, as long as it's the Warlord and the brigade patrol detachment shares the keywords. And that's it. Basically, it allows you to take Mortarion, Magnus, or Gulliman and take a battalion of their faction and get your command points back. But they have to be the Warlord if you take them, because they're big Primarchs. Of course, they're going to be the Warlord. They're going to lead your guys into battle. So I'm sad you can't take 5. You can take 5 tank commanders. You just have to take. Well, you can't take 5 commanders either, because it's a rule of 3. That's how that works. So Creed needs Supreme Commander. Yeah, so who knows what's going to get it? I'm assuming that in the PDFs, that's going to be a thing. They're going to add those into the PDFs and stuff as well, whatnot. So we'll see how that works. So then we have a super heavy detachment. They did preview this in the Knights sort of like detachment. So it's 3 to 5 Lords of War in one. It's 3 or 6 CP cost. Knights and Chaos Knights will have a rule where if your Warlord is a Titanic unit, you get 6 CP back, so it'll refund it like a battalion. If you have just like a War Dog be your Warlord, then you get 3 CP back, essentially. So you'll be allowed to use it very similar to a battalion if you're using an army of Knights, essentially, and have lots of command points. You can spend 3 command points to just add a Lord of War to any army you have. So if you want to just add a Lord of War, that's it. Just 3 command points. Like if you wanted to take Gulliman and not have him as your Warlord, then I guess you could just take the Lord, that one there. Then we have a Fortification Network. This is one of the ones I'm most interested in. I feel like most armies will be 2 detachments. However, it's 1 command point to get the fortifications, and if the fortifications have the same keyword as your Warlord, you get the command point back. So it's basically free to take it in terms of command point cost if you want to add some fortifications in. And of course, 2 command points to add in like a single unit of something if you really needed it for some point or so. Andrew asks, did they straight up drop the Airwing detachment? Yes, the Airwing detachment is gonzo. No longer. Rapidone, thank you very much for the follow on Twitch. I really appreciate it. Whose job is it to tell Gulliman we're spending the command points to tell him he's the Warlord? I don't know. I definitely wouldn't be my job. Necrons just had fortification previewed. Yes, I know. It's like Age of Sigmar. They have terrain for factions, and I love that. Do people think that this means all armies will get a Primarch-like commander? Who knows? We'll see. Like, it's everything. They've opened it up, right? Like, that's the thing. They've really opened it up. Based on the point power level cap of the army. We'll see. Okay, so a really cool thing here is they've explained how to write and how to put information on a battle-forged army list. So detachments aside, this little page here was one of the most important and interesting pages I've read so far. So it says you have to put what units are in your army and what battlefield roles, what weapons and war gear they have, the power rating of each unit and the points, keywords, psychic powers, warlord traits. So if a unit has any keywords that must be chosen by you, your army must make a note. So you have to write down your keywords if you pick what they are. If a unit is a psyker, your army roster must make a note of which psychic power it knows. Some rules can be selected randomly. If you choose to randomly select, then write random. And then after you've determined what mission, roll to determine. Which means if you pick your psychic powers, they have to be part of your army list now when you're playing a match play game. You can't just pick them on the fly. which I think is very important. It actually means that you can either roll randomly or you have to select certain things, which means that you don't get as much leeway when it comes to like making sure that you get the right powers for the right matchups, which is interesting. If a unit has any rules that must or can be selected or generated before the battle, your army must detail what those selections are. Example, litanies of battle, powers of the Satan, exarch powers. This does not apply to rules that selected at the start of the battle, like sacred rights for the Sisters of Battle. But it means like, you have to choose what sort of rules or like what they have equipped. It's very clearly stated it has to be in your army list. If a unit has been upgraded by a stratagem before the battle, your army roster must make a note of the upgrade. So, stratagems that enable additional models to have relics or warlord traits, or stratagems that grant units better characteristics or abilities. If a unit has a warlord trait via such a stratagem, these must be noted on your army roster. This is another huge change, which means that if you're going to use like veteran intercessors, if you're going to use the extra warlord trait, the extra relic, that sort of stuff, you have to note it in the army list and you have to select it with the army list, which means that it becomes part of the army instead of you just picking and choosing based on who you're fighting. So you have to have a plan for all these things if you're going to like a tournament or an event or whatever. And I think that's excellent. If a unit has a relic or a warlord trait, your army roster must say what relic and or warlord trait it has. The rules for relics and warlord traits can be found, etc., etc. So you have to select your relics, you have to select your warlord traits, and they have to be part of your army roster for match play. So as you can see, it's definitely interesting. Exactly like AOS, no pre-gaming. Exactly. It's very, like if you're building a list, you have a plan. If you're going to be selecting and basically taking advantage of the selections, they become part of your list. You can't just like pick and choose as you go because, oh, I'm playing you, or oh, I'm playing you. Well, I'm clearly going to change it because it's a better selection. But it also makes things like the chaos stratagem to switch a psychic power in the middle of a game really powerful. Because you can be like in the middle of a game, oh, I really need the psychic power. I'm going to use the command point to switch it, and it makes things like that more relevant as well, which I really like. If you are playing a game that is using points, your army must retail the total point values. You must also note how many reinforcement points you have set aside, if you have any. What detachments are included in your army and which units are in which detachment, you have to note those down, etc., etc. What your army name is and what your faction is. You have to know which army is your warlord. This must be a model with the character keyword if your army has any. They gains the warlord keyword, and you must give it a warlord trait. Another thing to note, the warlord traits from the big rulebook, this one have gone. There's only one warlord trait, which is in the Crusade part, but you can select it if you want. How many command points your army has at the start of the battle. So basically, all pre-game stuff has to be noted, and all selections have to be noted on your army list. It's one page, but I think we spent a lot of time literally talking about one thing. SWD, yes. Is that the new rulebook? Yes, it is. How have you found counting up to 100 victory points? It's actually not bad once you get the hang of it. Have a pen and paper. Very important. Make sure you just have a note. Just do little ticks, right? I got 3 points here, 3 points there. It's very simple once you just get into the habit of it. It's going to make us stats and coverage much easier. Oh, definitely. It's going to make stats super easy because we'll see, okay, which units have been selected for what warlord traits being selected more than others. Like, it's going to make it super cool to see, like, what's being used and whatnot. This is going great. Thoughts on doing reserves in secret, only revealing them when they're locked in? I love it. It's really fun. I love that kind of shit. It's great. Thousand Suns. So then we go into the stratagems and how to use them. So you have to pay command points. You cannot use them more than once per phase. And stratagems not using during a battle round don't have a limit, essentially. Unbound armies don't have CPs, especially. And unbound armies spend them... Oh, if an unbound army gains CP. Okay, never mind. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stratagems in the core stratagem section. Now, some of these have actually switched quite a lot, actually, and it changes like how you look at the army quite drastically. The command reroll is different now. You can only use it for very specific things. You can't just pick up any dice and reroll it. That's not a thing anymore. You can use it for advance, charge, psychic tests, deny the witch tests, or to determine how many dice you do with an attack of the weapon. Oh, a hit, a wound, a damage, a saving throw, advance, charge, psychic test, either which, etc. So you can't really use it for anything like Gulliman getting back up, or or Vect. Now I can't re-roll the Vect roll. If I roll a 1 on a Vect like just stab me in the back, and I have to live with it. There's no re-rolling that. It also means that you have to re-roll the roll, test, or saving throw. So if you roll a charge roll, you can no longer just re-roll the 1 dice. You re-roll both dice. If it's a psychic test, you can no longer re-roll just 1 dice. You re-roll the entire psychic test, right? So it's different. It's very, very different than what it was before, right? It's a big change, but very subtle within the rules. Then we have the cut them down stratagem. So this is the one that everyone's been alluding to in the chat this whole time. Use 1 command point, use it when an enemy unit falls back. Before anybody moves, you roll a d6 for each model that you have in that unit within an inch. Oh no, it's roll 1 d6 for each model in your army that's within an inch of that unit. So if you have like 4 different units all engaged with 1 model, and that model or that unit tries to leave, you roll 1d6 for each model of your entire army that's within an inch of that. Oh, that's actually a lot more powerful than I thought. It means that you can just totally try and be like, if you run away, I'm going to roll so many dice to try mortal wound you to death. That's actually kind of cool. Then the one that they reviewed, which is Desperate Breakout. So essentially, this is the anti-tri-point stratagem. So you roll to see if models die first, then you can fall back or do a fallback move through enemy models, ignoring enemy models, and then if any enemy models end with an engagement range of the enemy, they can die. But then that unit can do nothing. It just literally falls back. It allows you to get away from a combat that you really want to get away from, to be able to shoot the unit that's in combat with. So if those paladins have wrapped you, that death company, sanguinary guard, and you really need to get out of there so you can shoot them, you can spend the command points and just get out of there in a pinch, lose some models or maybe lose the whole unit, and then shoot them to death, which is super, super important, right? I just realized, will Battlescribe be updating detachments now? Who knows? Yeah, Vect is still very, very powerful. Then we have the emergency disembarkation. So when a transport dies, instead of having to disembark wholly within 3 inches of the transport, you can spend a CP to disembark wholly within 6 inches of the transport. And then they die on 1s and 2s instead of just 1s. So if you really need to just get further, or disembark when your transport dies to get onto an objective, right, that's 6 inches away or behind a wall or something, you can spend the CP to just extend the distance you can disembark from your transport, which stops people from being able to really surround your tank and then kill everybody inside with a surround, essentially, which gets rid of those feel badsies. Overwatch, as we said, is now a stratagem, unless you're Tau or you have a rule in your datasheet that allows you to do it. 1 command point, which is great. It speeds up the game, but it's also kind of cool because in a pinch, you can be like, you know what, I will Overwatch here. You spend the command point, and then you get a couple of key kills in that you needed to make a charge not as powerful. And you'll see that in the next battle report, actually, that I'll be posting probably tomorrow. 2 command points for counteroffensive. So this is the interrupt stratagem. However, it has been changed. Now it reads, use this stratagem after an enemy unit has fought this turn. Select one of your units and fight with it. Next. That's it. Before it was after the enemy has activated a unit that charged, then you can interrupt. Now it's different. It's just after your opponent has fought with a unit, you can spend 2 command points and pick the unit that goes next, which is a big difference. It's a big change, which means you can use it in both fight phases, right? Which is really cool. And then Insane Bravery. 2 CP to auto pass morale. However, you can only use this once per battle. That's it. There's only 1 Insane Bravery. So if you have a bunch of big hordes and you really need to stay around, or you've got 1 guy left alive, you can keep that 2 CP in your pocket to keep him around to save you the game, essentially. So we'll see how that goes. Apparently, Prepared Physician is included in some of the missions. Could be. Who knows? We'll see. Okay. Pow. So then we have Strategic Reserves. So Strategic Reserves are essentially you pay command points to put units in reserve, and they can come in on board edges, essentially, except your opponent's board edge throughout the game. And that's it. It's just pretty straightforward. They come in, you can't bring them in turn 1, they come in turn 2 or turn 3. If it's match play, they stay out past turn 3, they die. But it does say that units that go back into Deep Strike just have to come back like the next turn, essentially. And here is where you get the information on aircraft flying off the table and going into strategic reserve and then coming back the next turn as well. Is there a limit? Yes, you can only put half your points and half your power level, and half your number of units and half your points in strategic reserve. You can't put all your army in strategic reserve. So it's CP to go. Correct. It's command points. So it's 1 for every 9, essentially. So 1 to 9 is 1, 10 to 19 is 2, 20 to 29 is 3. But it's not like if you can put like 4 units in reserve for 1 CP that are under 9 power level, for example, if you had like 3 units that are 3 power level, you could put all 3 in for 1 CP. So it gives you a lot of versatility with that. So by fly off, yes. So flyers can fly off the table now. So you just pick them up, and if you want to, they can just fly off the board. Ta-da! Can you deep strike Terminators on turn 1 now? No, you cannot. Reserves cannot come in on turn 1. Are all the restrictions match play in the B? Are they? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they might be different or very similar. And then we have actions. So actions, you've got 2 different actions. You've got an action and a psychic action. They cannot be done by aircraft. Pretty straightforward stuff. Yeah, and essentially the action will specify exactly what you need to do to complete this action. And a lot of them are tied to gaining points in missions. So if you ever played ITC, think of them as like an engineer, where you had to basically sit there for an entire battle round to get a point for your engineer mission parameter. So that's what an action is. So usually it's at the start of the movement phase, unless you advanced or fell back. So if you advanced or fell back, you cannot do actions. And if there's like enemy models near the objective, you can't do your action and things like that. So they just get you points, but you basically have to sacrifice a unit's ability to shoot or do close combat or do other psychic powers and stuff to focus on something specific to that. So, as for the psychic actions, can be done by specific even aircraft that are psychers, like a Hemlock. Yes, because that's a psychic action. But it just means that you would, but then he couldn't cast any other powers or stuff. Like, he'd have to focus on that specifically. Cool. Then we have terrain features, which is probably one of the biggest changes to 8th edition. Kenny Stone, Hemlock's counter psychic action. Well, we'll see. Like it says, actions cannot do actions at all, and then psychic actions, yeah, Yeah, so we'll see. They might need a little bit of FAQ because it's like 2 separate things. So we've got hills, which are pretty standard. Obstacles, which is a thing like, you basically get cover while you're within 3 inches of it now. So obstacles very clear. If you're 3 inches, models receive it. As long as an enemy unit shooting through it, if you're within 3 inches of an obstacle, you get cover. Area terrain, you have to be within it to get cover. Things like craters and stuff like that. And then buildings, which are like your fortifications and whatnot. But I like that there's a classification of them. And then you have the terrain traits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different terrain traits. So I can seem a little bit complicated at first. However, some of them are really irrelevant and, kind of like, they're, you kind of like take them as they go. But some of them can be very interesting. So defensible, they previewed that. An infantry unit within 3 inches or inside can either overwatch better or get +1 hit in the ensuing combat. Okay, cool. Then we have a defense line. So it's literally just means that you can fight within 2 inches of the enemy instead of 1 inch. So that basically you don't have to be like right by base to base or whatever. Breachable means that infantry, beasts, and swarms can move through walls and pieces of terrain and stuff. Like you're not blocked by movements. You can just move through stuff. Then we had difficult ground. So difficult ground is -2 movement when moving, advancing, falling back, or charging unless you can fly, which means that craters, for example, are difficult ground. So it means craters not only subtract -2 your movement, now they subtract -2 from your charges and your movement, and if you're advancing as well. So it makes craters like really strong at bogging people down. Then we have dense cover, which they reviewed, -1 to hit if you're shooting through it or shooting into it, essentially. Unstable position, that's a very cool one. You cannot set up models on top of this terrain feature. You can go up and down it, but you cannot end on it. So an unstable model would be like a little tiddly wall, so people don't go, oh, I'm going to wobbly model syndrome on this tiny little rock. You're like, no, it's an unstable position. You can't end your moves on top of there because that just looks silly. Exposed position, you do not get the benefit of cover while on top of the terrain feature. Very straightforward. Obscuring, that's the line of sight blocker. 5 inches in height, blocks line of sight as a big, infinitely high block of line of sight blocking. My favorite. Aircraft and models with 18 or more wounds can be seen normally, which does mean it's true line of sight. So if you can see through the obscuring piece of terrain at a big night, you can shoot it even though it can't shoot you back. Really cool. I really like that. Engagement is not 1 inch anymore, says only Constructed Prism. Engagement range is 1 inch and 5 inches. It's if you want to attack in multiple ranks, you have to be within half an inch of a model that's within half an inch. But if you're within 1 inch of the enemy, you can fight. I know, confusing. Then we have light cover, +1 to saving throws, not invulnerable saves. Heavy cover, +1 to saving throws in melee, unless you charged, not saving invulnerable throws. I'm not changing invulnerable throws. And then scalable. Infantry, beasts, swarms, and models that can fly can move and end on top of a terrain feature with this trait. Yeah, and that's it. Basically, scalable means that if you're infantry, beast, and swarm, you can move up it. And that's it. And then inspiring, +1 leadership to anybody within 6 inches. And then they kind of go through it and go, hey, these are all different terrain features for our stuff. So, you know, what everything is. So when you play the game, it's very easy for you to go, you know what, that's what this is going to be. So it's pretty cool. And then we have example battlefields, which is awesome. So it goes, look, this is what it looks like. This is good for a narrative play or a small game. This is what you want for a big game, right? You know, this is good for a narrative game. This is what you'd expect for a match play game. And this is for smaller battles. And it's really cool because it's like, look, this is not fair. This is definitely what we expect for like match play. And it's cool because you can mimic this on the table and have like a whole bunch of stuff done with that, which is really cool. And then we have open play rules. So the open hostility mission pack, basically how to make your army, mission, read the mission, battlefield, attack a defender, reserves, declare your reserves and transports, deploy your armies, roll for who goes first, pre-battle stuff, ending the battle, determine the victor, etc. And you've got a couple of games just for just for play, like open play, and just kind of like rolling some dice. Then we have the match play one, which is what I'm going to be focusing more on. So the mission pack, really, really interesting. So you go, battle size, right? Determine your mission. This is the rule of 3 right here. Rule of 3, still a thing. Okay, that hasn't gone anywhere. Read the mission. Place your objective markers, then set up the battlefield because you cannot put terrain on objective features. On the objectives, sorry. Then you select your secondaries, right? So you secretly pick your secondaries. Then you reveal them. Then you roll off to see who attacker and defender is. The defender selects the deployment zones and starts deploying first. But this is a really important part of this whole thing. You declare your reserves and transports secretly. So before you even start deploying, you have to write down what stratagems you're going to use to put stuff in reserve, what units are going to be placed in reserve or outflank or deep strike or whatever, what units are in what transports. And you basically have to write all that down before you even know what's going on. So once you've put it onto the table, you have to commit to it when you start deploying. And you don't even know who's going first yet. So if your army has like a crazy gun line and you're like, man, if I go second, I'm going to lose all my stuff, and you want to deep strike a bunch of stuff, you can't just like find out, oh, I'm going first now, and then go, you know what, now I'm going to try and put them on the table or whatever. That doesn't work anymore. you have to declare pre-game movements. If you're going to phantasm stuff, like all that, you have to declare it in this step. And this is, it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to, but I really like the fact that it's saying, hey, if you want to do all this crazy random stuff before the game starts, you have to commit to doing it with your general battle plan and battle strategy. Torquemidas, thank you very much for the follow. Vokesh, thank you very much for the follow as well. So that's really cool. Yeah, I really like that. And then you deploy. So defender puts a unit, I put a unit. So it's unit by unit. And then you just roll off, and the winner chooses to go first or second. And that's it. Then you do your pre-game abilities. And you start with the player who's taking the first turn. So the player who's taking the first turn does their pre-game abilities first, and then the player who's going second. Then you begin the battle. It talks about how to concede if you need to concede, how to end the battle, determine the victor. And one of the coolest things is if your army is painted and based, you get 10 bonus points at the end of the mission, aka paint your shit, which is awesome. Does that include Space Marines redeploy? Yes. Everything has to be noted down. Any pre-game movement, anything like that, you have to declare it secretly. Like, you write it down, but you have to commit to it once before you even start deploying. And they specifically say, like, anything stratagems, that sort of thing, you have to do it before you even start deploying. So you just have to declare it. Okay, because it says any pre-game stuff as well. Let's see. So you secretly note down on your roster which units will be in reserve, which units will start the battle in a location other than the battlefield, and if you have any. Oh no, you're right. You are right. You're right. You don't have to. So you can do pre-battle abilities. That would be when Phantasm. So Phantasm is super powerful now. But if you had any like deep striking ones, you'd have to use them now. You'd have to declare them now. Cool. So secondary objectives. There are 16, I believe, secondary objectives, and you can max them out at 15 points per secondary objective. However, some of them don't max out at 15. For example, say the Warlord, if you kill the enemy Warlord, you just simply get 6 points. That's it. And, so that's less than half of what you can get. But that one can be easy to get sometimes, depending on what army you're playing. But some, to max them out, you kind of have to do something every single turn to max it out. So it can be very hard to get if you're not careful. And you get to pick 3 of these and then 1 of each. So you've got Purge, No Mercy, Battlefield Supremacy, Shadow Operations, and Warcraft. Now, of course, they have said that they're going to release like secondaries for specific factions, and there's going to be a new set of secondaries for like the tournament pack and stuff like that. So we'll see kind of how that works. Prepared position is not in this rulebook. It's not in here. Get your dry erase boards now. Yeah, exactly. 10 points isn't nothing, but not as much as it sounds. It's not nothing. If you have your stuff painted and your opponent doesn't, and there's a 10-point difference, then that's a 10-point difference. So purge the enemy, assassinate, 3 points for every character you destroy. Straightforward. But you can only max it out if your opponent has at least 5 characters. Bring it down if you kill monsters or vehicles with 10 wounds or less, 2 points each. If you have 3 points, if it's 11 wounds or more each. So cool. Titan Slayers, kill 1 Titanic unit for 10 points or 2 Titanic units for 15 points. Slay the Warlord, 6 points if you kill the Warlord. That's it. Thin their ranks is like Reaper, basically only useful if you're killing hundreds and hundreds of models. Attrition, 4 points at the end of every battle round if you killed more enemy units than friendly. So this is great against MSU style builds, but MSU is very strong, so I could see attrition being used a lot. Endgame Objective, pick 3 models from your army, and for each model, so 3 models, the most expensive models in your army, for each model that survived at the end of the game, you get 5 points. So it's like a keep your big, expensive models alive secondary. First Strike, so if you killed anything in the first battle round, you get 5 points, and an additional 3 points if more enemy units than friendly were destroyed in the first battle round. So if you killed anything in the first battle round, 5 points, and then 3 more points if you killed more than your opponent in the first battle round. Cool. But that's a maximum of 8 points for First Strike, see? So it's like an easier 8 points, but you can't max it out to 15. So I think there's going to be a very interesting it's going to be interesting for you to have to make a choice of, do I go for easier points and not max it out, or do I try to get stuff that's harder but I can max it out? So when you're playing your opponent, if you can't max something out, then you kind of have to stop your opponent from maxing theirs out to offset that difference. It's going to make the secondary choices very interesting, really. Battlefield Supremacy, engage on all fronts. That's like the recon one, the one that I love. Just go into every table quarter. Line Breaker, score 4 points. At the end of your turn, if 2 or more units from your army are wholly within the opponent's deployment zone, but you cannot use aircraft for that. So that's cool. It's kind of neat. You kind of like get into the enemy lines. You need to do that for 4 turns, and you get max points, essentially. Domination, 3 points if you control more than half the total number of objective markers on the battlefield at the end of your turn. So if there's an odd number, that could be good, but you have to like commit to getting onto all the objectives. Great for like MSU style builds. Shadow operations. So these are, you start getting some cool actions. So investigate sites, 3 points each time a unit from your army within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield does this action. Oh, cool. That's neat. 1 infantry unit from your army can start to perform this action at the end of your movement phase if it's within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield, and no enemy units are within 6 of the center of the battlefield. The action is completed at the end of your turn. So you just get 3 points. You just have to do it for 5 turns if you want the full. But as long as you have an infantry unit that can go into the fully within 6 and get the characters cannot do this one. So that's one the characters can't do. Repair teleport homers, like the behind enemy lines from. It's a combination of behind enemy lines and engineers. So 5 points every time you repair the teleport homer. So be entirely within your opponent's deployment zone. Raise the banners high, which is what they did. So you put a banner up and you get progressive points as the game goes. And then you've got Warcraft. Now, 1 infantry unit in your army can perform this action. So no, you can only do it once. Warcraft, by the way, some of the coolest ways to get free points. If you have Psychers in your army and you want good secondaries, Warcraft can be amazing for you. Mental Interrogation is a warp charge value of 4, and a psychic character basically casts it, and if there's any enemy characters within 18, you get 3 points. So you do that 5 times in a game, just cast a warp charge 4 power 5 times, and you get 15 points. Super, super easy. The other one is Psychic Ritual. Have your Psyker wholly within 6 inches of the center of the table with a warp charge value of 3. Have them do that psychic power 3 times in the game, 15 points. But that is an all or nothing approach. And then Abhor the Witch is score 5 points for each enemy Psyker character you kill, and 3 points for every other Psyker unit you kill. So that can be really, really cool. And I will be right back. I just need to hit the restroom, and we shall return in like 2 seconds. And I'm gone. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Jits with Hits. Thanks for the follow. Really appreciate it on Twitch. Now, if you have any questions, make sure you throw them into the chat, and we'll kind of get through that as well. I hope everybody's been enjoying the stream so far. Thanks for coming by and hanging out and all that good stuff. Has been bring that chair guy back. Hey, I'm back. Who's this guy getting in the way of the chair? Hey. My chair knows exactly what he wants to do, so I'll let my chair do what he wants to do while he does it. So then we have some cool missions. So something that they did do is, so they have 1, 2, 3. So 3 missions for combat patrol. That's 500 points, essentially. Then they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 missions for 1,000 points plus. Yeah. So no, for up to 1,000 points, and then they go to the actual 2,000 point missions. So they have retrieval, and as you can see here, you have the primary. Now, something to note is the primary mission, or the primary for every single one of the missions, is exactly the same. It is hold an objective, you get 5 points. Hold 2 objectives, you get 10 points. Hold more objectives, you get 15 points. So 5 points for each thing. And all it changes is you get a secondary objective that you can do specifically during that mission, that if you want to, you can take instead of taking one of the other secondaries. And the objectives are set. So all the objectives are set. A lot of times the secondary objective has to do with the objectives that you have on the board, and the deployment is set as well. And some missions have special rules that affect what you're doing. Can you discover the distinction between reinforcements and strategic reserves? Reinforcements are like summoning a unit of demons. That's a reinforcement. And then strategic reserves is anything that arrives via the battlefield, like deep striking or something like that. They arrive, yeah, essentially. Soda. Oh, what's your favorite soda? Coca-Cola? Yeah. Or Iron Brew. Is that a good one too? So Eternal War, so we got Strike Force, that's your Dawn of War one, essentially. Then we have the 4 Pillars, which is the one I've been incessantly playing. So yes, I am quite good at that one now. And it has a special rule. So reinforcement units cannot set up within range of any objective markers, right? Which is awesome. So they can't set up within scoring range of objectives. Interesting. Then we have No Man's Land. This is really cool. It's hammer and anvil deployment, as you can see. However, in this special rule, in this mission, and I love it, if a unit has a pre-battle rule that allows it to be set up anywhere on the battlefield, that unit must still be in your deployment zone. And if you have a rule that allows you to make a move, you must end the move within your deployment zone. So this mission specifically tells Raven Guard to go shove it. Because you cannot deploy anything, even with special rules or pre-game moves or anything, or scouts or whatever. You cannot deploy anything in that middle of the table. So it's called No Man's Land for a reason, which actually is really cool. Primaris Powerhouse, hey, thanks a lot for the gifted subscription on Twitch. Fargaze, thanks for the follow as well. So that's really cool. I'm really excited about a little change there. That's a really good change. Our Eternal War, the competitive match play missions. So these are the Eternal War missions. However, apparently there's going to be a GT pack that's going to have missions that are specifically for GTs. So we'll see. For now, use these until we get wind of the other ones. But this is cool. They're hey, Evan, what's going on? And then we have the Scorched-Earth. So they have a special rules where you can burn your opponent's objectives, essentially. And that's literally an action where you can just burn your opponent's objectives. Anybody that's played WTC style will kind of see that that's a way. If anything, I could see some of the missions being just as crazy in the GT pack, except all the secondaries being worth up to 15 points to make it even. Vital Intelligence, which is another one. Mission rule, data terminals. This one is cool because once you control an objective, you can move away from it and you don't have to control the objective anymore. Basically, you hold it for a turn, then it's yours, and then you can move away, and you don't have to go back to it unless your opponent like steals it away from you. So you can't move into no man's land, so it's in an enforced gunline position. Yeah, in this mission. Only in this mission, Theater. Chair deserved a sub. Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you gave the sub. Hey, Chem, what's going on? And then we have Onslaught, which are for 2001 and plus, essentially. And they have 3 of those missions. But essentially, you can see they just have like lots more objectives and stuff. Like it scales up, which I kind of really like. And then we go into narrative play. And narrative play has always been super fun. I always really enjoy narrative play missions. And of course, they put the Tau near the narrative play because that's what they are, just narrative scrub fish people. Are rules for summoning in the book? No, they are not. So, and then we go into crusades and how to set up your crusade. So your crusade, you basically need to pick a faction. You build a crusade like list of units that's 50 power level or less, but you could basically start it. It cannot exceed 50 power level, and you can play with any points level or any power level like with your opponent, but up to 50 and 5 what are called crusade points that you use to do cool stuff here. So how many objectives in the 2,000 point missions? Well, like objectives, 4 pillars is 4 objectives. There's one that has 6 objectives. They're 4 or 6, right? Let's quickly check that. So Strike Force has 6 objectives. This one has 6 objectives. That has 5 objectives. This one has 4. That one has 4. And that one has 6. So 6, 4, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so cool. So then you build your little order of battle. Then you have your little requisition points and stuff, and you basically give your units names and whatnot, and kind of build a little crusade sheet and stuff, which is pretty neat. And then you play games with it as well. But you have like each unit will have a little crusade card, and you keep track of how many units it killed, and how many times it died, and how many times it survived, and any cool like feats it's done, or any like vendettas that you want your unit to have against the opponents and stuff, combat tallies and things like that. And each unit will gain experience depending on if they lived during the battle, if they killed units. Every 3 units they kill to get another point of experience. And you can pick 1 unit per battle to be marked for greatness and get some extra experience. Of course, if they die, they don't get to be marked for greatness. And then you can use requisition points. You start with 5, but you can only ever have 5. And you can use requisition points at any point in time to increase the cap of your crusade to have more units in it, for example, or to buy things like relics and additional warlord traits and whatnot. Named characters always have their warlord trait that is associated with them. So you don't have to. So if you take a named character, they always have their warlord trait, and it's always active, essentially. But your characters or your warlord doesn't automatically have a warlord trait. You have to buy the warlord trait for him or her. So these are the requisitions. So you can increase the supply limit by 5 power level for 1 RP. You can get fresh recruits. So essentially, you can get a unit and add or subtract models from the unit, or add models to the unit, so change the size of the unit and whatnot. And then you have resupply for 1 RP. You can change the war gear in your units. You can repair a unit. So basically, if they have battle scars, you can like get them to heal up or whatnot. Psychic meditations. You can change a psychic power, because if you have a psyker in your crusade, they have like specific psychic powers assigned to them when you get the unit, and you can change a psychic power for for points. You can add reinforcements or whatever. You can give it a better like characteristic profile or whatever. You can add stuff to it, give it an extra relic, things like that. You need to pay points for it. If you want an extra warlord trait, things like that, or relics. So you just have to pay for things as you get them. And then you gain ranks. Based on the ranks is you get battle traits and you get battle honors, and they give you cool things from extra movement to repairing to a whole bunch of stuff. You have weapon enhancements. You can get your psychers to be better at casting and denying. And then you got some really cool relics. And some of these relics can only be given to units that are legendary, which is really cool. But something I love about the Crusade format, which is why we're going to be starting some Crusade stuff on the channel, is we're going to like keep track of this stuff. And I love that you can play your Crusade with people who have no interest in playing Crusade and just play a Crusade mission, and they could play their ITC competitive like tournament like game, and you could just play a Crusade, your Crusade against them, and you can play it, and it's compatible, so it's kind of cool. I think a Crusade should allow named characters. Well, that's completely up to you and who you play your Crusade with. Twigbeard. That's a cool name. Thank you for the follow. And then if your unit dies, you have to roll to see if they gain battle scars, because they could literally be like they're moving slowly, or they, this is a cool one. If you have an infantry unit that basically got wiped out last turn and they gain a battle scar, and then they get fatigued, and from then on they can't score objective markers because they're just so tired of fighting. I think that's hilarious. And then you've got like Crusade Blessings and stuff. I don't know what that is. And then you've got how to split units and summon units and combine units and how that works in your Crusade, as well as the ability for you to photocopy this and use it essentially for all your hobby needs. And that's pretty much the main set. And then you go into like the Crusade Mission Pack, which is very, very similar to the other packs, except you basically put the terrain down and then place objectives. So the objectives are not set. And then you have your agendas, because each time you go to battle, your Crusade will have specific agendas that they're going to try. Instead of secondary missions, they'll have agendas, and they're trying to sort of like, what do they want to do? Demoralized, I know. Yeah, battle fatigue. It's the same thing as demoralization, isn't it? And it's going to be cool to kind of have like your operations that you're trying to achieve while doing the main mission at the same time. But you have like cool combat patrol size games, right? So a couple of combat patrols. Then you have the incursion size, which is 1,000 points, right? So you have a couple of those. The relic is now a narrative mission, thank goodness. Sabotage, right? Recon patrol, the ritual. Then you've got like your is that incursion? What size is that? Incursion, combat patrol, incursion, strike force. That's the main one. This is your 2,000 point games, right? And then you've got a whole bunch of stuff. Narrow the search, cut off the head, retrieval, raise and ruin. And then you've got an onslaught for Firestorm. If you really build your Crusade up to like 2,000 plus points, awesome. Grand Assault. And then you have your rules appendix. So this is a cool little addition, rules appendix, and some of this like artwork is just gorgeous. Ow, ow, ow. So Crusade armies can play against non-Crusade armies as long as it's a Crusade mission. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because they want you to be able to sort of play your army with whoever you want to play with, right? So designer's commentary on the rules, right? Things like keywords and whatnot. And then this is the entire list of blast weapons. I'm not going to read it all. It's out there. This is like one of the only gripes I have with this rule set is I looked up all these and I go, this is a wall of freaking text. GW could have just gone Space Marines and then put all the Space Marine stuff. Astra Militarum, put all the Astra Militarum weapons. You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you just categorize them so I don't have to look at all of the different weapons? I just want to know, like, I've got the, what is it? Where the heck? I can't even find it. Okay, so I've got like one over here, right? And then I've got one over here, and then one over here. It's just really confusing. Wait, Maelstrom objectives are gone? Yes, there are no Maelstrom missions in here, but you can still play Maelstrom. Nobody's telling you that you can't. Just still play it. It's the same thing. Who knows? Maybe we'll see what happens with that. I'm loving what I hear from it. Yes. So then you've got like, benefits of cover when not in terrain. So it's like how to do that. Ignoring the benefits of cover. So how ignoring like units that have the ignore or cover rule. How does that work? Improving the benefits of cover, right? Units of psychers and how to like manifest the deny from them. What shooting again does, like using shooting again strats and stuff like that. Units that are like non-shooting abilities, like instead of shooting, like smoke and stuff. Yes, you can use them after advancing. Yes, you can use them even if you can't shoot, for example. Always fights first and last, and how that works. Fighting with individual models. Fighting again, right? So how that works. Attacker priority, morale priority, right? Resurrected models, and explodes, and repositioned and replacement units. Now, this was I think there was a question one of you asked. What about units that get like teleported versus redeployed or whatever? This explains how your redeployed unit works. Your green tided unit, your black cornucopians unit, your tided traders unit, right? That this explains that, which is kind of how that works. And the other rules and terms. Basically, every rule and term, keyword, all that stuff, like there's a whole bunch of stuff and it kind of goes into it. And then some cool little pretty pictures. And that, folks, has been a couple of hours of us diving through the amazingness that has been the 9th edition rule set. And this is the core book. There's a lot more to come where that came from. So, of course, if you haven't already, make sure you click that like button. Make sure that you share this video so that other folks can take a look at what we're doing. And stay tuned for more content. I'll be doing a whole How to Play 9th Edition series. I'll also be diving into more faction-focused stuff when the point values and whatnot are received. And I'll probably be doing a mission focus as well. So we'll see how that works as well. But if you have any questions, I'm going to open up the floor to everybody out there. I'm going to go through some of the questions in the chat before we end today. Dave, thank you very much for the follow as well. For missions, how does it work for non-psychic armies like Tau that cannot take psychic actions? Well, you can take missions that don't have to do with psychic actions. Sfera and Maz, thank you, Mazzy, thank you for the follow. Best lunch break, says Theo. I'm glad you enjoyed your lunch break. Hey, Scary, were you a playtester? I was not. Been trying to get on the playtesting team for years. However, they haven't reached out to or selected me yet, which has always made me a bit sad. Want to go over the chapter proof books next? Well, I need to get them first. Scary, what stash works very well? You beautiful, evil, good vibes. Oh, the stash? You mean this? Yeah. Clap, clap, clap. David says, thanks for the read-through. No problem. Thank you very much. Chris says, are you telling me that vehicles and bikes can now ride up and down buildings? No. Scalable, which is what you get, means only infantry, cavalry beasts, I think, can go up and down. I don't think bikes can now. I'll just double check for you. Just make sure, because if it's scalable, you can go up it, right? So scalable is infantry, beasts, swarm, and fly. That's it. Infantry, beast, swarm, fly. Scalable is the kind of terrain. So there's lots of terrain traits, and each piece of terrain has its own terrain traits. If it has a scalable, it means that people can go up and down it, but it's very specific in who can go up and who can go down. Question, says Lulu. How viable do you think assault armies are going to be in 9th? I think they will be viable. However, it will take some finesse to use them, like assault armies are wont to be, highly more finessed than shooty armies. The PDF is just the core rules. Correct. The rulebook has everything. Now, this video, by the way, Chris, is saved to the channel, so you can always just rewatch it. We've literally been sitting here for 2 hours, going over everything, flipping through, chatting about the rules. So I hope that all of you enjoyed it. AW Esperanza says, with some of the missions starting on your turn and scoring points on your next command phase, how do you think it'll affect army building? Well, that's a very interesting change that has really affected the way that I play the mission, because having to defend on objectives every turn means that you need durability on those objectives, or you need to put a lot of pressure on your opponents so they can't physically deal with the things that are getting you points. So it changes list building a lot. And that's one of the biggest changes once you get into playing the game. You're gonna have to find, oh shit, I have to be getting these objectives, and so when you see like the bat reps I've done, that the list I created kind of does that well, which I really like. John asks, do you take all combat attrition chests at the same time, like destroy, transport, disembark? Yeah, I just roll the dice for each model in the unit. Yeah, sure. That's what I would do. Hey, you got my last name right. That's right. Esperanza. Mi nombre es Ridvan Martinez. So I am a Martinez by blood. I was born and raised in Mexico. My parents are from England, and I'm in Canada now. Is there a change in fighting order? Marcin? Yeah, so yes, your opponent chooses who fights first, but chargers have to go first, basically. The wording on scalable is that only specific units can end on top of the train. However, all units can go up as long as they can also move all the way down in the same move. Yeah, they basically just have to. Sure, they can go up and down. You're just wasting your time going up and down a building that way. Thoughts on changes to CP reroll? I'm sad I can't use it for Vect anymore. But I understand it. Like, it's very specific now. You use it for very specific roles, and that makes them more. It makes them more reliable. But other things like stratagems or special abilities that are oh, if this works, it's going to be amazing. You can't bank on that, like on a reroll, to make that happen as well. So I think that's going to change the dynamic of some of the things that we see. Okay, folks, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been fantastic. Make sure that you check me out on Patreon if you'd like to become a denizen, support the content that I create here today, join a growing positive community of Patreons. We do a whole bunch of cool extra stuff. And as 9th edition gets going, you can betcha that we're going to be doing a lot with the Patreons as well. Thanks a lot for your ongoing and continued support. I always do a live stream on Twitch Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually it's a hobby stream. However, we'll be doing a lot of 9th edition stuff / hobby. Tomorrow I might not even have to do an update video anymore. So it might be hobby again, or we might do something else. But we're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff. And if you have any really cool content you'd like to share, make sure you use the hashtag just to put paint on it. There you go. Just put paint on it, which is a hashtag we use on social media, because that's it. Just put paint on it. Just get your stuff, put paint on it. Now it actually is worth 10 extra points. I'm also on Twitter if you want to follow me on that. Scary2, because Scary 1 was apparently already taken. Thank you, everybody, for coming by. Stay safe, stay healthy. I really appreciate it. No problem, Star Miner. Thank you, everyone who joined on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, Periscope. You folks made this possible, made it really fun, and I really appreciate it as well. And I've been Scary, your grateful host, signing off until next time. In the next video, we're probably going to go over the Indomitus box, everything that comes in there, and all the rules. 9th edition, folks. Get excited. I know I am. Scary out. Ah, the Dark Kin.